Hello, I'm Fiona Greenwald, the Engagement Officer for ERIC Northeast Environmental Records Information Centre. And welcome to this short talk on a little introduction to wildlife recording. Now, I'm just going to share my screen and turn my video off, and we'll focus on the talk. So this is just the first in a series of short talks introducing wildlife recording, and prompted, well, it's something we've been meaning to do, but prompted by the Tees Valley Nature Partnership having a little focus on wildlife recording here in March 2021. So these talks will cover, hopefully, the plan at the moment. A little bit of today's just a general introduction and a look at what a wildlife record. The next talk we'll have a little bit think about why we should be recording wildlife. The third talk is thinking a bit about send the records to and how the information sharing works. And by then you'll all be completely inspired and want to know about some local surveys with that are running currently or about to start. So I'll just say a little bit about ERIC first. So ERIC's not a person, it's the local environmental record centre for North East England, and there are 4 of us there. Paul is the main coordinator, and Anne and Irena are the people who deal with all of the data and the information coming in and going out. And then I'm in a relatively new post, the engagement officer. Normally we are based at the Great North Museum, Hancock, but we're just working from home at the moment. So it's a great place with a great history of wildlife recording. It's totally appropriate venue to be in. And we'd usually have a team of fantastic volunteers. There's a lot of information to deal with, you know, in the database, and we do rely heavily on volunteers, but that's just on hold at the moment. So local environmental record centres, which ERIC is one of, are places where wildlife information for an area is pooled together, pooled together. So it's all in one place, and then it just makes it a little bit easier to be accessed and used for nature conservation purposes. So we've got records from all sorts of any living group of organisms, also habitat information and some geological information as well. And it's part of ERIC's network of record centres which cover most of Britain, and our one is here. You can see our boundary in northeast England, right up to the Scottish border, down the Cumbrian border and along the North Yorkshire border. And although it doesn't really show it on this map, our remit extends 10 kilometres out into the North Sea. So it's a fantastic area to be based in. Obviously, we've got some bigger urban centres, you know, Newcastle, Sunderland, Gateshead, Tees Valley, Middlesbrough, and that area. And then we've got the uplands in the North Pennines, we've got Kielder Forest and farmland and woodland sort of throughout the area, and the absolutely fabulous coastline. So it's a really super area to be involved with. And one of our jobs is to get more people recording. So that's part of the reason for this talk, is the more information we've got, the better we can help wildlife. And we can often people, and we can get records that might just be sitting in somebody's drawer somewhere. People hand them in. They might have a relative who has done a lot of recording on paper and maybe spent years noting things down from their garden or a walk. it's great having it recorded, but if it's just sitting in a drawer somewhere, it's not a massive amount of use. So we get handed things like that, and our volunteers are one of the main ways that that data gets put into the database, and then the information's usable and can be accessed. And around about 3.7 million records in the database at the moment, so it's a massive amount of information. And where does this data come from? Well, all over the place. There are a lot of community groups and naturalist groups that send information in. So, you know, things like botanical societies, bat groups, bryophytes, all fungi groups, lots of different groups. And just you know, it might be an area community group who's have a little BioBlitz, so they would collect all their information, send it into us. We do get information from formal wildlife recording schemes, from places like wildlife trusts and other conservation organisations. So we get information gets passed on from them, but a lot of information does come from individuals who are just out on their walk or on their patch, spotting things and recording them. And really without that input, we just wouldn't be able to do as much to support the natural world as we can do today. I read recently in the State of Nature report, information from the Centre for Ecology and Hydrology, that the value of citizen science in the UK was about £20.5 million per annum, and over 70,000 volunteers are involved collecting that information. Now, there's no way, sadly, that that amount of information could be paid for to be collected. So volunteer recording is really, really important for wildlife and conservation. And what is a wildlife record? It's basically a recorded sighting of something. So it needs four main bits of information. We need to know what the species is, who saw it, when it was seen, and where it was seen. Now, it might be you don't exactly know what you saw, but if you could get a good photo, or perhaps if it was a bird, if you could record something like that, if you've got some identifiable features, or it might be feathers, so something that an expert could perhaps from your information, that something could be identified, that would be fine. So we need to know what the species is. We need to know who's doing the recording, and that's really so it's accountable and traceable. And also we might just need to find out a little bit more information. You know, somebody else could have sent a similar record in, and it might just be worth digging a little bit deeper to find out a bit more information. The date is important, and the location. Ideally, the name of a place, you know, like Whitley Bay Links, and also the grid reference. And nowadays there are apps like What 3 Words that can really help you pinpoint where you are. And all of this is important to standardize the record and make it usable. I mean, I'm sure lots of you can think about things where you've got general recollections of seeing things. I can remember walking my aunt's dog in a field years ago, and we used to always see blue butterflies. Okay, I could probably get the location of it. I could probably remember the years that I saw them, but how many did I see? What species was it? Well, I don't know. I hadn't actually got to that stage then. That information's too vague and general. It needs to be specific with these four main parts of information attached to the record. And that means you're sighting out in the field, for instance, this comma butterfly. Perhaps you note it down in a book, or you spot it in your garden and you've got a hard copy of that information. It could be often wildlife hides. I've got a notebook where people write their spotting, their records in there, so we can get things like the information in a hard copy, and then it gets put into the database, so it ends up in a format a bit like this sort of spreadsheet type format. Nowadays, with a lot of recording apps, a record spotted, and you can record it right in straight into an app on your phone, and it goes straight into the database. You know, your phone would have things like the date on it. If you've got your location sort of settings switched on, you've got the location there. It's your account with the app, so the name's there, and you've maybe taken a photo, so perhaps you can name the species, or at least you've got a good photo of it. So that's what happens to wildlife records. Then once they're all in, with all that standard comparable information, it means it's usable and searchable. So Anne and Irena especially do this kind of stuff, pulling out the information for the people that need it. So again, with sort of modern software, they can use shape files to find information within particular areas and boundaries. It can just be done by grid squares. We could search for all the records of a particular species or a particular sort of group of amphibians. Also, they could search for things, say they're within a particular area, they might search for all the amphibians within that area. Searches can be done as well. But again, it's because that information's been standardized that it's usable and searchable and useful. And the information's used by lots of people. It is relevant to lots of planning applications, so ecologists are looking at it, conservation projects, people looking at biodiversity. They are again looking for historical information or changes and trends that can affect how a project might be targeted. And there are several academic research projects come to us looking for information, and many local authorities and government agencies do apply to us for information. So it is relevant to things happening out on the ground. It can be used to monitor change in species distribution, checking if there are protected species on a potential development site, and just spot things like changes in population is a really important, trends, if you can spot trends and reasons why things have changed. Here in this data, you can see there's been a sudden drop, so that would, obviously there's been a reducing trend, but again, when you've got that data, you can spot these things and have a closer look and investigate it. We produce reports on particular species and groups of species. Often that's with the Natural History Society of Northumbria. And a major use is helping to target conservation projects so that they're sort of performed and carried out in the most efficient and have the most impact possible. And again, sort of helping to get set up with particular recording projects like the Big Watch Weekend for the Whale and Dolphin Survey. That just had a focused effort and gave a lot more comprehensive information on the distribution of cetaceans in the northeast sort of area of the North Sea. And this is the last slide. And this is one we'll start with on the next talk, just thinking about who can protect wildlife and who can do recording. And the answer is anyone, but we'll look at that in a little bit more detail on the next talk. So I'll just stop sharing this screen, video on again, and just say thank you for joining in and watching, and please join us for the next talk, which will be next week, but these talks are here available for anyone to watch anytime, and start having a think about getting ready to do some recording. Thank you.